and stuff, put on the LCE, the low bearing equipment, trying all that stuff out then at about 12 or 13 years old, not knowing that eventually I would become a soldier. But he taught me how to spit shine combat boots. And that lesson was good because it took me into the military in 1975, and if you couldn't shine your boots, you were in trouble. KP, grease trap, all kinds of stuff. Back then appearance was big. You know, you had to look the part, be the part, do the part. And so I thank him for those lessons. And I ended up down at Paul Brenson's down on the corner, God bless his soul, and he taught me again how to continue to shine shoes, and he taught me how to cut hair, and you know, and one thing just led to another. And eventually though, after so many years, I dropped out of high school here and went out to Utah and joined the Job Corps. And it was there that I earned my GED high school diploma, got a basketball scholarship, and went off to college for a year in Fort Scott Community College and played basketball until my mother asked me to come home and work. And when mom asked you to do something, I don't know about now, but back then you didn't question, you just did what she told you to do. And I came home and I began to work. I worked over at Isaac's Bakery at night, making donuts. Left there and went down to an old famous Alberta crate. Mr. Simmons, worked down there for a while. And from there, I ended up at the foot of the bridge at Goodyear with Wayman and Lillian. And all along the way, there were people in my life that saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, you know. And there was a gentleman there, and I wish he was out here today. He told me something down there at Goodyear. He said, boy, one day you're going to be somebody. And I held on to that. My mom used to tell me that all the time. And one day, we were walking down the street here, and there used to be a recruiting office over here somewhere. Y'all remember that? There was a sign on that recruiting office. We were going to Miss Reed's, used to be right over there. She said, I said, Mom, there's a sign that says $5,000 signing bonus. What could you do with $5 grand? She said, boy, I ain't never seen that much money in my life. I said, let's go in here and see what we got to do to get that money. We walked in and talked to a real nice staff sergeant recruiter, and he said, yeah, you got to join the Army. They're the only one offering it. You got to go to one of the 4 training bases. They're gonna make your nose bleed, your body ache. They're gonna do things to you, man, gonna make you want to die. But they're only gonna do it for 6 weeks. And you know, now here I am, I'm fresh out of college. You know, around here you ran. I mean, there was always a reason to run. If you was on the wrong side of the track, you ran back to the right side of the track. You know what I'm talking about. So you was always on the run, so you had good leg muscles. You know, we'd be out there in the project, play basketball all night around the fire pit. So we was in good shape, in other words. And so I thought he was joking. You're talking to an athlete just come out of college. If anything, I was in good shape. And I said, where do I sign up at? I called his bluff. And that was the beginning of a 30-year and one-day Army honorable, successful career. And so I joined. And 6 weeks later, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Delta 9-2 Tank Hill. I graduated, went to the pay officer, Sir Sgt Hayes, reports to be paid. Got my check for $5 grand. Couldn't wait to get back home, give it to my mom's. And a lot of people don't know this. That house that she was living in, my mom's never had to make a house payment after that. Because I took that money and she got a check from the bank. Bank used to be over here. And went and paid the lady off, and we never had to make a house payment. That was in 1975. And so that was a decision that yielded big time for my family. And I ended up at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and there was a drill sergeant by the name of Drill Sergeant Rydell. Back then you had to be a staff sergeant to be a drill sergeant, but he was so sharp until he was a drill sergeant as an E5. So he had to have something going on. And he began to shape this little old African-American boy, teenager, hungry for something, didn't know what it was I was looking for. Began to shape me into becoming a infantry professional. Fighting machine, they said, a soldier. And he did a tremendous job. And then from there, I ended up in Germany in '76, and I ran into a guy by the name of Sergeant Haywood T. and his wife. They took me in. They were from Alabama. Some of you probably know him, retired Sergeant First Class. He's now the pastor over at Macedonia Church right over here. But him and his wife took me in, and he began to continue to groom me, and he saw things in me, and later on, I got introduced in that same unit in Germany to a guy by the name of Staff Sergeant Trevor Bennett. Hardest guy I've ever known in my life, but he was a Vietnam veteran, a survivor. And that guy trained us like we were in a prison camp. And I never could understand why. And he said, if you could envision what I went through and what some of the men went through in Vietnam with me, you would understand why I stayed in the military, to train young soldiers, to prepare them, equip them for the ultimate sacrifice. And I began to appreciate him. And when I retired up in DC, he was sitting there at my head table as a retired command sergeant major. And he talked about PFC Hayes when I showed up. But one of the things that he taught me is my motivation. A lot of people sometimes say, why you still wear your uniform? There are young soldiers that I've known over the years that made such an impression on my life that I vowed after I survived 9/11 in the Pentagon, I'm the only one out of a group that walked away. And I asked God a question in my office, why am I still here? And he said, I'm transitioning you from man's army to God's army full time. And now my wife and I, we pastor New Freedom Christian Ministry down here on the corner. I have no desire to do anything else. I survived just cause down in Panama. We took out Noriega down there, you know. And from that point, my career changed, and I began to become a senior enlisted advisor to the commanding general of the National Capital Region in Washington, D.C. You know, advised them on enlisted issues, quality of life issues, equipment that our soldiers were going to need, meals they were going to eat. That's a huge job, okay? But I was fortunate to graduate out of a class of 608 at the Sgt Major Academy, and because I had experience in D.C., I had a White House clearance, I had worked with 5 previous presidents. I worked for Colin Powell, I worked with General Austin, a lot of those guys. There was no one else more qualified to be that advisor than me, and you'll understand why. But these guys taught me something. These 3 guys and my mother, they taught me something, primarily these 3 NCOs. And here's what they taught me. They taught me the difference between a stripe wearer, a medal chaser. I don't have all the stuff on my uniform that I've earned, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And a professional, non-commissioned officer. I'm not a sergeant, I'm not a sergeant major, I'm not just a NCO, but I am a professional, non-commissioned officer, and I am once a soldier, and I'm always a soldier. And I wear this uniform, I make it my business, I make it a priority to stay fit so I can wear this uniform, because I lost 184 good soldiers, good airmen, good Marine, good Coast Guard, good civilian people at the Pentagon that I work with every day, love their country, very patriotic. And I made myself a vow that since they're not here to tell their story, I'll wear and don this uniform so I can tell their story. And so I'm just grateful, but I'm a professional non-commissioned officer, and I live up to that creed because they taught me that. And in '76, when they pinned on Teague and Trevor, pinned on my corporal stripes, where my plaque at? Oh, sister, I'm finna get you. This became, can you hold it for me? This became my watchword. A lot of you are familiar with this, but this hangs in my house right now. It's not a day go by that I don't look at it. And it motivates me. And I'm going to read it, and maybe you'll understand why I still feel the way I feel. My job now is to help soldiers, help veterans in any way I can. And if you have any issues, I am a certified DAV service officer. It just befuddles me that we have as many Vietnam veterans that I'm aware of. Other veterans, young veterans, older veterans who paved the way, still fighting to try to get entitled benefits, still fighting to try to get treatment, still fighting, falling through the cracks. And so I'm here if you need my service. I worked for a while there down at DAV, and it was too political for me, so I said, hey, y'all keep that. I'm not a diplomat, I'm an ambassador. And I work for you. And so I would tell you, take advantage of it. I mean, it's easy for me. It's easy for me. If you need help, I won't know you need help until you ask for it. You don't have to go through all these changes. You know, I've got too much packed into me to just let it sit idle. So if you need help, get in contact with me. But I would tell you this, if I help you, you're gonna have to have some documentation. Because if it's not documented, it did not happen. Y'all hear me? When you come to see me, Herbert Bell would tell you that. He done sent dozens of people to see me without documentation. And it's disappointing that I have to tell them it's nothing I can do, because I have to see some documentation. I don't care how far back it goes, and don't tell me you lost it, you don't have it. I have a 1-800 number you can call, and they have it in your file. They will get it to you for your record, so you without excuse. And military men don't make excuses anyway, nor women. So if you need the help, take advantage of it. That's what it's all about, you know. I can't help you if you don't ask. You don't ask, you don't have. But let me just read this to you. This is my watchword. It'll probably speak to some of you. But I got introduced to this in 1976 by Sergeant Teague and Staff Sergeant Bennett. And again, when I was serving up in D.C. as a first sergeant, it was presented to me in the old guard. And I've got several copies, several versions, but it hangs right there in my house. I look at it every day. I've got other things there. But it says, presented to First Sergeant Sgt Hayes, Creed of the Non-Commissioned Officer. How many of you live by a creed? I live by a creed beyond the military, because I'm a soldier, once a soldier, always a soldier. I'll never stop being a soldier. And it says, no one is more professional than I am. I am a non-commissioned officer, a leader of soldiers. As a non-commissioned officer, I realize that I am a member of a time-honored corps, which is known as the backbone of the Army. I am proud of the Corps, the military service, and my country, regardless of the situation in which I find myself. I will not use my grade or position or attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. Competence is my watchword. My two basic responsibilities will always be upmost in my mind. Accomplishment of my mission in the welfare of my soldiers. I will strive to remain technically and technically proficient. I am aware of my role as a non-commissioned officer. I will fulfill my responsibilities inherent in that role. All soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership. I will provide that leadership. I know my soldiers, and I will always place their needs above my own. I will communicate consistently with all my soldiers, never leave them uninformed. I will be fair and impartial when recommending both reward and punishment. Officers, no offense, sir, but officers of my unit will have maximum time to accomplish their duties. They will not have to accomplish mine. I will earn their respect and confidence as well as that of my soldiers. I will be loyal to those with whom I serve, seniors, peers, and subordinates alike. I will exercise initiative by taking appropriate actions in the absence of orders. I will not compromise my integrity nor my moral courage. I will not forget, nor will I allow my comrades to forget, that we are professional, non-commissioned officers, leaders of soldiers. Thank you, sir. That's my creed, and I have other creeds that I live by. But I want to share a story with you as I move to close. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 91st Infantry Brigade. They fought in World War I. But there was a commanding officer who was in charge of that unit. And he had just been given a bunch of green soldiers. They were just green. They didn't know nothing. And they ended up in Europe. And they were going to fight 3 bloody battles. And as they began to engage in combat, part of his training, I was talking to someone earlier, we talked about how all of the hands have to be on deck to pull things like this together. There's a lot of moving pieces, and we want to commend our dear brother for assembling such a team to pull this off. But it's not easy to do things like this. You know, you come up with a plan, you develop the plan, and then you resource it, and then you task organize, and you delegate different pieces of it, and then you go out and you execute. And in his planning strategy, this commanding officer, and I won't call his name, you might know him, might ruffle some feathers in you. But anyway, as he trained his new green fighting infantrymen, one of the things that he did was he took the 91st Psalms.
Yes, sir.
And he made it a requirement,
yes, sir,
that they had to learn it. They had to pray it. Every day before they would go out and engage the enemy, they had to recite it individually, and then they had to recite it as a unit, and he would lead them in praying that psalm. I'm not going to bore you with it, but it's the 91st Psalm. I guess historically they took the name 91st Infantry Brigade because of that. And all the other supporting units that was in that brigade sustained 90% casualties. It was 3 bloody battles. But his unit, in 3 battles, back-to-back bloody battles, they sustained or abstained 0 casualties. 0 casualties. So what am I saying? It's not so much the training, the weapons qualifications, the PT tests and all that stuff, the physical requirements. You have to balance that out by knowing our Lord and our Savior. See, I understand who kept me in Operation Just Cause. See, I understand when I almost froze to death in 1976, and for 36 months I was told I'd never walk again. I had to have extensive surgery in my lower extremities. I don't have bones in some of my feet. I'm not even supposed to be standing here. I was training on a mission with the Germans and Brits, and I had some weak leadership, stripe wearers, I called them, metal chasers. Didn't know anything about accomplishment of the mission, how to prepare and plan and execute. And I suffered for that. But I was a professional soldier, and I fought tooth and nail. See, I went in for 4 years to get that money, but something happened in the process. Something happened. I met some professional non-commissioned officers, and they made an impression on me. Vietnam guys, you know, like some of you. You guys, I owe you so much because you opened up the way. See, because back then, you didn't see too many African Americans wearing Sgt Major stripes. Maybe a corporal, maybe a sergeant, very few. And I made myself a promise that if God would allow me to stay, I was going to do everything I can, because I knew where I came from. Do everything I can. Number one, to make Mama proud. Before that, to make God proud, because I felt like I had been preserved and kept for a reason. For a reason. And I was driven, not to fail, but to succeed. See, when I was running around here, it was hard back then. And when I left this place, I said, you'll never find Sgt Hayes back in this God-forsaken place. Because it was tough. White people didn't like black people didn't like white people. It was always a struggle. And I didn't want to grow up like that. I didn't want to be a part of that. Let me tell you something, what the military taught me. Military taught me to love my brothers. We're a team. You know, I served with some of the greatest white soldiers who would give their life for me. I was their supervisor. They respected me. You know why? I never told one of them to drop down and do a push-up and I not drop down with them. That's leadership. That's right. Never tell someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself.
Amen.
And it was hard for me to make this rank, because racism was in the military too. But I made myself a vow that I'm going to learn this system, and if they can make it work for them, I'm going to do the same thing they did, but I'm going to do it a little bit better. I'm going to make it work for me. So I was without excuse. I couldn't hide behind that racist card anymore. I couldn't play that game anymore. If I wanted to make it, then I had to do the things that were necessary. And then, see, nobody could deny me. And so I had to look beyond the race barriers, because they were there. They were obvious, you know. There was injustice. Martin Luther King said this. He says, look, any injustice, okay, any amount of it, okay, any of it, you know, if it's there, then there's no justice at all. If there's any there, there's no justice at all. And so what am I saying to you? Yeah, we've had some difficult, hard times. But if I can do what I did, then anybody can. I had humble beginnings. I ran around here and got in trouble. I didn't do everything right, but I saw an opportunity. And out of that opportunity, it led me to accomplishing a 30-year Army career. Now, I said I don't wear all the medals and stuff. My uniform can't hold all of them. You saw my house and some of my storage being. My wife said, why are you keeping all this stuff? It means a lot to me. But when I was in Washington, D.C. preparing for a public service review on the mall, and I'm closing after this, there was a unit that was OPCOM to me from Fort Campbell. They just come back from the theater. I was responsible for putting them there. And they were living in one of the hotels in D.C. And I'm closing with this. And I came down that morning for breakfast, and they were sitting around the table, a staff sergeant and 2E5 team leaders. And they all had these 550 cords around their neck, and they had knots in them. Most of them had 18 knots. One guy had, staff sergeant had 19. And there was this little black PFC boy sitting there crying. And they were making fun of him, bullying him, because he had no rope and no knots. And I wanted to know what was going on. And this is what he said. This is what they said. I said, what does all that mean? They said, when we get back to Fort Campbell, the staff sergeant jumped up and said, I'm going to get an ARCON. The 2E5 said, I'm going to get MSMs and all of my subordinates. He ain't going to get anything. I said, what does that mean? He says, because this is how many kills I got. And the sad thing about that was this. You had all these civilians in that lobby listening to this crap. We don't fight and serve to be killers. We fight to defend a way of life. You know, John F. K. said, freedom is not free. There's a cost that has to be paid. If you have to shed blood, if you have to take a life, then yes, that's what you're training for. But that's not the primary reason we go. We defend our freedom. We defend what these Vietnam veterans did, and some are doing now. We defend that freedom. We don't go in there, man, looking to kill nobody to get a medal to put on your chest. And that's what we have become. We're so bloodthirsty. And that's why I don't put all the additional medals on my uniform. That was the last time I put one on. This is what I had on then, and ever since then, this is what I wear. I don't put all that other stuff on. Because I don't want to be identified with that mindset. I'm a professional soldier, and I'll carry that to my grave. I thank and appreciate all of you for your contributions, but I want to challenge you. We're once a soldier, always a soldier. There's young boys and girls running around here in this country, in this town, just like I was. Black, white, it doesn't matter. They need direction. We are supposed to be the ones. Mr. Mills, he didn't discriminate against me. Mr. Strickland, he didn't discriminate against me. Jake Pond, he didn't discriminate against me. They gave me opportunity. And Barack Obama said this: we haven't done anything until we serve a cause greater than ourselves. And so let's not let all these young people that's running around here doing stuff, getting in trouble, creating more work for Sheriff Griffin and his folks. I'm pretty sure they would like to be doing something else, but they're going to do what they have to do. But let us be, you know, those standard bearers, those gatekeepers that we once were. You know, let us reach out and touch those. When I see one, I'm going to engage. I don't care if he's your son, your grandson. I have an obligation. And when I wear this uniform, it fits. You know why? Because it's a magnet. I get young people walk up and want to know, they want to talk, they want to engage. And I share. And so God bless you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for listening. Hopefully I didn't bore you. I see Mr. Ward over here. I'm about to drive him for push-ups, you know, because I'm a preacher. I'm long-winded, but I'm going to end right here. Again, thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to share that with you. Appreciate it. Keep me and my family in prayer. Be right over there on the corner. Stop by sometimes and see us. We'd love to spend some time with you, share some things with you. If I can help you, all you got to do is ask. God bless, and God bless the United States of America.
Amen.